All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the No Offense podcast with Tom and Ro, the show where it's your fault if you get offended. All right. So this is our first podcast, and we're kind of noobs. So hopefully it's not awful. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce myself, and then have Ro introduce himself, and then we'll talk a little bit about why we're doing this podcast. So a little background. Me and Ro kind of grew up together, at least for high school in Houston,
Our tentative
Texas.
years are the good times.
The formative years.
Right.
And I moved to Dallas for college, got my software engineering degree. I'm currently working as a software engineer in Seattle, Washington. And so over the past few years, I've become more and more interested in politics and debate and things like that. I'll let Ro introduce himself.
So, what's up? My name is Rogelio Topete. I am a full-fledged Mexican, so that means that I have every right to talk about any Mexican things without y'all getting offended.
Yep.
I graduated from high school with Tom. I was fat, and I went to New Orleans for 2 years, studied at community college, came back, and went to University of Houston, and majored in political science, and now I'm like on a victory lap times 2. But hopefully we'll get that done within this year, and I can be a college graduate like my boy Tom.
Yeah, we're both late bloomers in that way. I went to University of Houston actually first, so it's kind of the opposite. And it was
Moody Towers. I remember Moody Towers.
Oh, it was so bad. It was awful. I actually didn't live in Moody Towers. I lived in the Quad.
Right.
But I was at Moody Towers a lot. And for people who don't know anything about University of Houston, the Moody Towers is kind of like, are we going to call it trashy? Is it the trashy dorm?
Think about it like, I guess Bayou Oaks would be described as the Shire, and Moody Towers would be like the lava of Mordor, you know?
Like it's Mordor.
Yeah, exactly. Like it looks like even like the Eye of Mordor in a sense, you know? And just stuffed students in there.
It's just tall, looms over campus. It has community restrooms, just like Mordor.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Mordor, you know? The orcs and the
pretty
goblins.
Gross. Yeah, and then I moved to Dallas, got my software engineering degree, and so like over the past couple of years, Ro, you can share what your experience has been, but I've just seen, a lot of dissatisfaction with the current state of the debate in our country. I think that people are kind of
right.
Some people are very, I won't say they're happy, but they've kind of found their side. And I think we both know people like that. People that are, maybe they're very conservative and maybe they are pro-Trump and they toe the line on all of their typical talking points. And I think we both know people like that. And you have your people who are, way on the left and maybe they are LGBTQ, maybe they like mention that little acronym a lot. And maybe
there's like trigger warnings and all that stuff. And
yeah, right. And they're totally comfortable with that. And they think that that's the way to go. And then you have a lot of people, I think, who are kind of in the middle. People like, I think me, people like, I think you, and people like a lot of other emerging sort of YouTube and podcast stars, I guess. I don't know, not stars, but just people who are emerging voices who are kind of tired of this like partisanry and kind of believe that there at least should be a middle ground where you can talk about your ideas and you won't be called a racist and you won't be called a communist or you won't, you're not on either side necessarily.
Right. Or like a radical or some sort of like a crazy person, like I think that my experience with it and the reason why, Tom and I came into it and we wanted to start this podcast, and specifically me, was because I couldn't talk about politics with anybody anymore, And if I did try to talk with them about politics, there's always like that degree of like sketchiness about it, where they're like, hey, does this guy believe the same way I do? And if he doesn't, like, should I not like him for it? And, it's so tied to our identities. And I think that politics doesn't work like that. Government should be like a wheel of the people, and we should be able to discuss it freely without being judged or, and like the ideas, like we can have diverse ideas and not have to fall into some sort of label or party or anything like that. We can have diverse ideas and we don't have to subscribe to some larger form of I don't know, I guess I would just say like Republicans or Democrats or liberals or conservatives. Everyone's always playing for teams, and I think that people like Tom and I are just tired of that, and we want to bridge the gap, and we want to have honest, real political discourse, the way that it's supposed to be, and we want to talk about things, and we want to say things freely and explicitly without offending anybody and not coming from a place of hatred or discrimination or anything. We just want to speak candidly about topics.
Yeah, I think you touched on something. You said something about it's about the ideas basically, and that really is what it should be about. Is how good the ideas are, and we all have limited data. Nobody has the answers to everything. Otherwise, all the problems would be solved. But we should at least do our best, I think, to look at the data that's available. And even if you don't have data, just talk about the ideas and break them down into their logical components and think about, is this idea better than this idea? Or if it's unclear, then why is it unclear? And you also mentioned, oh boy, I forgot what you said, but towards the end,
About political discourse and like being able to
stuff
say
about identity. Actually, I'm just going to segue into something that happened the other day, which I think really is a good example of one of the problems with discourse in this country. I posted something on Facebook where I was asking about cultural appropriation.
right.
I asked, can somebody give me some examples of cultural appropriation? And we won't go deep into that because that's like a whole nother 5-hour
That's
episode.
like for another episode exactly. But I think I know what you were talking about that one guy who almost everything seemed to be cultural appropriation, and like it almost became like a piece about how like literally white people, or I guess the American culture, have stolen everything from everybody, and that's not okay, and like there should be credit given where credit is due, and that's almost like facetious, and it's just, it doesn't seem fair.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
More than just the content of what he said, which I think we could both dissect and find plenty of problems with, but more than that was just the fact of how he kind of, I guess, conducted himself, even though it was online on Facebook, which is not the best place to have a debate. I think it's a perfectly fine place to have a debate, right? That's where people are. That's where people are discussing things. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a fruitful and energetic discussion on Facebook. But the problem was, and I think this is significant of how many people are in today's debate climate, is he posted things which he had to know were going to be controversial. He had to know that they were. He was posting things like
Katy Perry twerking.
Katy Perry twerking is cultural appropriation. All white people have done throughout history is basically enslave other people and steal from other people and cause death and destruction around the world. And I'm white, and I'm not even going to say that that's completely false. White people have done a lot of really horrible things throughout history. That's a whole nother debate too. We could have a 5-hour thing about that. But the problem was he came and he said these super heated, controversial things, and then he got really upset when people disagreed with him, and he left. And I went to his Facebook profile, and he had posted like a subliminal Facebook status about, oh, I'm so tired of having to explain everything. Here's the problem, and I see people do this all the time, where they get upset about having to explain things to other people. We live in a country of 260 million people, something like that. We live in a world of 6 billion people. I can't remember sometimes things that I had a meeting for 2 hours ago. You're going to have to engage in rational debate, and you're going to have to repeat yourself. You're going to have to make sure you understand the ideas that you stand behind. You're going to have to explain things to other people, and you can't be that upset when people ask you to explain and when people want to engage in debate with you. You can't get upset and run away. You could be the most right person in the world, but you have to represent what you're right about.
That in itself is like almost unhealthy and narcissistic, that behavior that people have adopted, where it's like, hey, you don't agree with me, you don't understand, I'm getting, like that. And I hate using this term just because it's always used as a talking point against like their liberal ideals or whatever, like trigger warnings. People are always making fun of that, but honestly, some people get really, really triggered just by simply asking them a question. And like, you can see it often, like when Milo Yiannopoulos shows up at a college campus, and people were like protesting and like, Trigglypuff, like that meme, Trigglypuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Like that is so interesting to me. Like how people are just like taking these things to heart when, in all honesty, although Milo Yiannopoulos says some like really sometimes it had objectively offensive things.
Yep.
It's still he's going there to discuss things, and he's like trying to figure it out just like everyone else is. And the reason why he wins debates and arguments is because he's not getting offended. So by getting offended, you're losing your credibility. You're losing your ability to have a say. You're losing your opinion because, like the saying goes, the first person to get angry loses, and that's what these people are doing. They're just getting angry. They're not solving any problems. They seem to have very little idea of like pragmatic reality of the world. Do you see what I'm saying? And like,
yeah.
So
I think the number one time that people get offended, and like we can sit here and try to define what offended means. I think it's actually kind of not a very useful word because I don't actually know what it means, to be honest. For me,
what do you mean by that?
What offended means? Like, for example, I can be offended by somebody who is correct, right? Somebody can be correct. They can say something that's correct. But because I feel like they're not on the same side as me, or because I don't necessarily, I don't really feel like they're being supportive of me as a human being, it can be offensive to me, right? But whether something offends you or not is just, I don't find it a very useful point of data for whether an idea is worth talking about, if that makes sense. That's just kind of how I feel. Like, I just don't understand the relevance of like, oh, this is offensive. Like, clearly it can be a bad thing for people to be offensive. I just don't think it's the most important thing for us to be worried about.
Right. But on that point though, I think that being offended, although, it sounds like I see what you're saying, but I think that the fear is that a lot of it's like a fresh scab. A lot of the things that have happened recently, like the civil rights movement, Jim Crow laws, internment camps, all these things, like prejudice against homosexuals, all these things is like a fresh scab, on like the American, like the mores of America. Like they think about it, and like I think that's why people get offended. I can understand that, and like as someone who's doesn't have that perspective, I can't really it's even like I'm tentative to even speak about it, but at the same time, is that the right way to be? Like, is that, like I'm not a racist. I'm not a homophobe. Like, I'm just trying to figure out what's best for the greater good. And like, I'm trying to have an honest discussion. And if you keep on getting offended by like what I'm saying and like what I'm asking, the questions that I'm asking, like how can we have this discourse? How can we come to an agreement if anything that I say is like, hey, your perspective doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Like, you don't understand. Like that in itself is offensive to me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you feel me?
No, that offends me, is just not being able to have a conversation. And I think we all have to just manage the fact that we are offended sometimes. And it's definitely useful to point out, but I think that it's watered down maybe once you're offended by everything. Once you're offended by everything, and once you say, once you start pointing things out as being offensive, and that's like the only merit by which you don't want Milo Yiannopoulos to come talk at your campus because he says offensive things. Why don't you just want to beat him in the war of ideas? Why don't you just want to bring ideas to the table which win against his? If his are so bad, then how can you show that? That's, I think, the more important thing to do if you don't want people like Milo Yiannopoulos to control the debate in this country.
Right. And he's controlling it. People like Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, those are all people on the conservative right who are just killing it. They're like, if you look at,
they're killing it. I think it's fair to say that they're killing it.
They're killing it. They're absolutely crushing it. And then you got like people like kind of in the middle, like Joe Rogan, who seems to be like a libertarian, and like, I can't even think of any other example, but
Dave Rubin is a good example.
Dave Rubin is another
Gad
one.
Saad. There's a lot of people. They're not like anchors on your local. They're not like anchors on CNN, but there's a lot of people popping up who are kind of taking a more centrist viewpoint. Maybe they're not like against gay marriage, but they're definitely not. They're not all the way on the left either, right?
Right.
So yeah. So on that note, I think I think we kind of have a good segue now into. I don't want to keep using the word segue. I'm using it way too much. You can only say it twice per podcast.
Twice per podcast? Is that the new rule? Should I write that down somewhere?
I'm gonna break it every time. But yeah, I think so. The debates were tonight. The first presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump was tonight, and I think we wanted to both say a word or two about it. I remember months ago hearing about when you started to kind of realize that Trump was really going to be the candidate. And then you realize, obviously, Clinton was going to be the candidate. You start to think about these debates, and you're like, "Oh shit, this is going to be a shit show."
Right,
and
like the
I
Super
think it was
Bowl, dude.
Yeah, but I think it was a little anticlimactic. What do you think? I'm not saying we should be looking at things like I wasn't necessarily saying that's the best idea for it to be a train wreck, but I was a little disappointed by the fact that it was actually kind of a decent debate. Like it was decent.
Right. And I think that came purely from the fact that Donald Trump knows that the only way he can win this election is if he starts chilling out, calming down, and like trying to speak less from off the cuff and like interrupting people. And he was doing that even still tonight. I don't know if you noticed, but like,
yeah, he was.
It was almost like watching children battle each other, and like Hillary was trying to be like the one that was classy. She was like smiling real big and laughing at all of Trump's jokes, and then Trump was like trying to be. Like watching his words very, very carefully. And you know what? There was something that was so interesting that he didn't mention once, but was such a hot button on all his debate tour, on all his like tours around the United States. He's always talked about is like the Muslims and how he's going to treat the Muslims. He didn't mention that one time. Like he kind of touched on it, but he also like it almost felt like he knew to check himself. Like, hey, don't say this on national television with such a broad audience. It's better to say it where you can just get people can just get a highlight off it on YouTube, but the rally is going to love it. These people are going to get hot and fired up about it, and they're going to love everything you say. But right now on this national stage, don't say anything that could potentially be interpreted as so far right or so such a crazy policy or precedent that could be set. By like. So I thought that was really interesting. I really enjoyed the debates. I was really excited about them. Partly because it was the podcast we had discussed that it was going to be about the debates, but also because it's awesome to watch. It's awesome to watch these two people who shouldn't be running for presidential candidates, who everyone's in consensus it seems, but yet they're still on stage debating against each other, and they almost seem like old friends who are, what I'm saying? Like they almost seem like they know each other really, really well. And Donald Trump is, I don't know if you heard Donald Trump say like, I just want you to be happy, Hillary. At the beginning, and I was like, oh, these people go golfing together, like they hang out, they know each other. You know what I'm saying? Like,
they knew each other. They did know each other in the past, and that's why this whole thing is just kind of, it's kind of dirty on Trump's part because he was clearly schmoozing with the Clintons in the past. Yeah. They were friends, so. I don't know if they were like coming over and having coffee together, but they were at weddings together and things like that.
Right.
It is striking how close Trump is following sort of the narrative that everybody had written out before, which is that he's going to act super crazy in the primaries, and then he's going to kind of tone it down and become presidential, quote unquote presidential,
right?
As the general comes closer and closer. But I think the problem is that once you take away his bombast and his audaciousness, and you have to just evaluate him on the quality of his ideas, he really is just not really bringing anything to the table. I wish that he was, just so it would be a better debate. But he like, it didn't seem like he was bringing up too much. Like he'll just reference his ideas. He'll say like, "Oh, my tax plan, this, that, and the other thing." But when you get down into it, I just don't think his ideas are very good.
Right. And I'm reminiscent of like the Obama when he was in the general election, or even Bush, and like they fired you up, like no matter what, they fired you up and they had awesome ideas, and you could tell these guys are smart. Even George Bush, who is like hotly debated whether or not the dude has a good IQ or whatever, like he's still, you know what I'm saying? Like in his general election, he still was killing it,
He was
and,
sharp, yeah.
Today when I saw Hillary Clinton, I was like, man, I really wish that email scandal never came up because she would be killing this guy, and I really wish she wasn't such a corrupt, like potentially corrupt and crooked, because like I don't know if you read the DNC emails about what she did to Bernie Sanders, but like also Bernie Sanders would have murdered, like absolutely made a mockery of Donald Trump on that debate station.
Bernie's
Even
amazing.
yeah, even Gary Johnson would have like shit on him. And that's another question. Like, why wasn't? Do you have an idea why Gary Johnson wasn't allowed to debate?
Yeah,
Do
there's a rule set up, by the stupid debate committee, which was set up by both of the Democrat and Republican parties. Um, Basically, you have to be reaching 15% in national polls to be
Oh, you
on the
got
debate
11.
stage. And I don't know, I don't know why we accept this, and I don't know why. I don't even know what polls qualify. Like, does it have to be from a majority
Gallup.
of polls? Like, who? Okay, just like one Gallup poll, and then you're in. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
how it works.
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, that he didn't reach the threshold to be in the debate, and that's a whole nother story. But yeah, Bernie would be great on the stage, and Clinton is just not a very. She is not the most gifted speaker, not the most gifted debater. You know what I
Right.
mean? She has to think a lot, but she's not like light on her feet like somebody like Obama is.
Right.
But I think she pretty much came as hard as she could, I think. Like, I think she did a good job in this debate.
Yeah, I wrote a couple notes on the times that like she roasted Donald, and she got him pretty good a couple times. Like she really got him a couple times, like with his tax plan and like the fact that he doesn't want to release it. And like I wrote this.
She was like, because you don't pay any taxes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote. And then she wrote this. She said this about the bait and switch. I don't know if you heard that part. When she was like, the reason why he doesn't release his tax plans is maybe for these 4 reasons. Maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Maybe he's not as charitable. Maybe he hasn't paid any federal tax. And then Donald Trump under his breath goes, and that makes me smart. The fact that he doesn't pay his federal tax.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And
Yeah, no, that was fire. That was fire on her part. That was
And
really
then-
good.
And like by that logic, because he hasn't paid any federal tax, she established that he has no real interest in the American people. And then she said that he's hiding how much debt he actually has, and it's curious, who does he owe money to? And so I think that she really she came really prepared for this debate, and she almost knew all the plays that he had in his playbook. Like off the bat, she knew. And if I had to be completely objective, far removed from any bias I may have, I would have to say Clinton won the debate. I don't know what you think, but I think that Clinton won.
No. I went in expecting. I actually was totally entertaining the idea that Trump could have dominated the debate. That was a possibility in my mind. And
Right.
once the debate started going, it totally was the opposite. I think that Trump is at a disadvantage because he does have to be careful about even though I think he was fairly withdrawn during the debate. Even then, you still have legions of people on Twitter talking about him yelling over a woman and this, that, and the other thing. And to be
Yeah.
honest, people in debates just yell over each other. I'm sure you can go back and look at Trump Obama, or not Trump Obama. That'd be interesting.
Clinton Obama.
Clinton Obama. You can go back and look at Romney Obama. You can look at any of the vice presidential debates, except for maybe Sarah Palin and Joe Biden. And you're gonna find instances where people talk over each other and raise their voices a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's just pretty much what happens in debates, and that happens between men, and I think it happens between men and women. I just am not so quick to jump to the sexism thing, and I think he was actually being fairly withdrawn for Trump,
Right.
probably worried about that impression.
Yeah. And the Twitter sphere is a devil, man. The Twitter sphere will, you know what I'm saying?
It'll give you a weird impression of the debates.
Yeah, exactly. If you go to the Twitter sphere, you put hashtag Donald Trump right now, you're going to get, in fact, I want to do it just really, really quickly, just to see the diversity of opinions, just by putting hashtag Donald Trump on there. And I guarantee you there's going to be just like if you get all your news from Twitter, that's cool. It's a great news place, but sometimes it's not the best place.
It's kind
to
of
get
okay to get your news from Twitter. It's not necessarily okay to get your opinion from Twitter.
Yes, I can agree with that.
Because you'll definitely find whatever's going on in the world, but if you just listen to what people say. Actually, I mean, Twitter was kind of right in that most of them kind of agreed that Hillary murdered the debate, but the specifics of it, Trump was being sexist by talking over her. I mean, actually, I noticed Hillary kind of seemed to be talking over Trump a couple of times too. Like it happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
And it happens in all business. You know, it happens in everywhere. You know, like this idea, like, and it also it's an interesting frame of mind. You know, because and this is another argument that I think is interesting to note and to think about, and like a good thought experiment to give yourself. If it's why is it sexist to talk over a woman if a man was up there, it would be okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they're
Yeah.
both equals, why can't they talk
I was
like
thinking the
equals?
exact same thing.
You know what I'm saying?
It's just bad for somebody to talk over somebody else. It doesn't matter what their gender is. And
Yeah.
you can go back and see plenty of debates where men talk over men. So nobody is critiquing that, or we're just forgetting about that because it's a woman candidate. I don't know.
Right. So here's a Donald Trump hashtag. Just the first one that came, literally the first one that came up. Her name is Deplorable American. It's at the Trump lady, and she said, "We are fighting way beyond this woman. It's what controls this woman that scares. Why do you think Leo, ICE, admirals endorse hashtag Donald Trump?" And then it's a meme that says, "Calm, cold, calculating. Hillary, evil to the core. Hillary has experience, but it's bad experience." And that's and
Right.
it's a picture of Hillary Clinton with her eyes closed, with her red pantsuit, looking like looking like a,
Like a vampire.
reptilian. Yeah, exactly, like a reptilian overlord. You know.
Oh my! It's so funny to see the levels that they will both stoop to, and then be respectful, semi-respectful, not even on the debate stage. Like Trump has basically participated in all levels of accusing Hillary of being like, you know, any kind of horrible thing you can think of, like founder of ISIS, all kind, you know, liar, worst person that's ever been in this administration, and
Right.
Hillary.
To blame for anything, NATO was her fault. The Iranian nuclear deal, which is actually like kind of a good thing. Yeah, yeah. I don't know why people that you know where that comes from is that like Orientalism. That I will give them, like the idea that Iran is supposed to be feared and scared of. You know, and like Netanyahu, the prime minister Israel, doesn't like that. Well, you know, like obviously it's to his benefit for like the Middle East to be destabilized and Israel to be running shit over there. You know.
Well, nobody stops it. Ron Paul had this right, and Ron Paul said that acts of sanctions are essentially an act of war, right? Because
Right.
when you have sanctions against somebody, you are saying that you're going to damage them economically, and when you damage somebody economically, you do end up killing people. People end up having worse lives because they're economically worse off. So when you have sanctions against another country, I think you do have to look at that from an ethical perspective and think about it that way.
Right.
What were we saying though before that?
I think that we were talking about. I actually don't know, man. I was
Just brain fart.
just brain fart.
I was
total
gonna
brain fart.
say something about Trump. Oh, Clinton is not immune to the stooping really low and the attacking of Trump. One of the most ridiculous things to happen this entire election season, really the next level of ridiculousness, was Hillary picking on the alt-right and calling the Pepe meme a symbol of white supremacy.
Oh my god!
One of the next level out of touch memes of this entire election season. Like, and to anybody who's active on the internet, all you could do is just like facepalm for an hour. Like, it's just awful.
Right, and like she's done that so much this election cycle, where she tries to pander to like, I guess the millennials, like you and I or whatever, you know, and it's just like Hillary, like don't do that, dude. You know, like you don't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like we're good. You know.
Well, did it work though? That's the scary part. I hope that it's not.
But I can imagine that it has. You know, I can imagine that there's a couple people who are like,
Pepe is a racist meme.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Clinton has my vote.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that is hilarious. And like that is so that's so funny how you mentioned that like in private spheres and like you know, on TV they're running ads like slandering each other's names like horribly, you know, like talking all types of shit. And then on the debate stage, these guys are like cordial, calm, almost like friendly to each other. They're being nice, saying like really like Trump was like saying like, oh, as long as you're happy, Hillary, you know, and like they were both alluding to this sort of like friendship that they have, and I thought that was like I don't know.
I think
what,
it was kind of a little, more than a little sarcastic, probably.
like facetious in a sense.
I mean, when Trump says all I care about is you being happy, and then you contrast that with everything that he said, there's no way that those two things really fit together. I mean, he did have the bare minimum amount of class to say that he hopes that she gets better when she was sick, which, by the way, was super spooky. But
Yeah, that was I don't know, man. I don't know. It scares me. Trump scares me, but he also like makes me like crack up. I don't know if you are like on the same page on that, but like he said he's like a comedian, like I feel like he's really out of touch, and it just
he is like a comedian.
yeah, he's like a comedian.
He
like,
just goes off the cuff.
Yeah, exactly. And he says things that I'm like, no, Trump, like you're running for like the most important position in the world. How are you getting away with that? Only a reality TV star can get away with stuff like that. And Trump has mastered it. He has like fans that like love him. Like, I'm sure that if he was like, you know what, let's revolutionize and like let's fight the United States government, he will have droves of people fighting for him. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of scary too.
Yeah.
Now I think about it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so kind of moving on a little bit so I've got some questions for you, Ro, and we'll both answer them.
Okay.
So, all right. First of all, future debates. What do you expect? Do you think that they will be more interesting than this? Do you think that we will get? Do you think that there will be some spicier things going down, or kind of what tonight was?
I think the strategy for Clinton right now is to continue doing her homework, continue trying to figure out what plays that Donald Trump is making. And I think Donald Trump's strategy now, the strategy that he's going to adopt is he's going to go more off the cuff. Now he's going to go more hardcore, he's going to be more Donald Trump in the coming debates, because we see now that if he continues trying to be like presidential like this, he's going to lose purely based on facts and all that stuff. Donald Trump has to go in there and rile up the people that want to vote for him, to get them on Twitter, like saying like whatever they want to say about Trump, like supporting him. He needs to get that support back, that fervent like love for Trump, So these next coming debates are going to be Trump coming out of the gate, trying to just get Clinton on her back foot and like roast her, like grill her the whole time, the whole debate. What do you think?
Yeah, I just noticed something interesting about Clinton tonight, and I think was good for her. The things that I like least about Clinton are things like when she basically does some of her middle of the road shit, where she like won't endorse legalizing marijuana, or she won't, basically when she's too much of a centrist for somebody like me, and Trump really didn't call her on any of that stuff or put her in a position to, because he can't either, really.
Right.
Because he's not coming out in favor of marijuana, legalization or anything. Well, that's just an example, but
right.
I think that we will see Trump being more off the cuff, because I think he'll realize that that's what got him to this point, and that's what's going to get him further.
Right.
Okay, I have another question.
Wait,
okay.
But just before I move on, I just want to ask you. I just want to ask you about I should have wrote it down. Move on. I'll come back to it in a second.
Okay. So my next question was, this is kind of the big one. Who do you think is going to win the general
election?
Yeah. You gotta be precise here. You gotta be correct. We're gonna return to this prediction.
Clinton's gonna win, Tom. My boy Tom. I'm gonna say it now. And hear me say it now. Clinton is gonna win.
Okay.
Come on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If Clinton doesn't win, what is gonna happen? At least if Clinton wins, we'll have more of the same. We've established politicians are shitty human beings. We've established that career politicians, are corrupt, and they all are out to get us or whatever.
Right.
And that's gonna be more of the same. It's gonna be trudging along with bureaucracy and all that stuff. But with Trump winning, I couldn't tell you what's going to happen within the first 3 months of his election, of his presidency, let alone the first year, the 4 years. I have no clue.
Right.
like, I think Clinton's gonna win, dude. Clinton has to win. What do you think?
That's hilarious because there's no way you can say Trump. I just don't think there's any data to really suggest. I don't know how Trump wins this. I guess I don't know enough about the history of presidential politics to know. I'm sure that there are upsets that you can point to and things like that, but I think this is a very new paradigm in that you have the first female presidential candidate.
Right.
She has a lot of sort of demographic things on her side with the electoral college and just the demographics that support her, whereas
I think it's like 90% of the African American vote. Or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard. I think Clinton will win. However, in a crazy world where Clinton loses, I think the way that she loses is turnout is low. Luckily for us, I think it seems like people are pretty excited about this election, and I'm already seeing a lot of just media about registering to vote and going out and voting. And even though people are pretty disillusioned with the candidates, I think that Jill Stein and Gary Johnson are both weak enough candidates that I don't think that we're going to see that type of upset where Clinton loses.
Right. And I read an interesting article, and like, stop me if I'm coming from like a source that's too biased, but like from the Huffington Post that said that like millennials are gonna lose this election to Trump because like a lot of us want to vote for Gary Johnson or want to vote for Jill Stein, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's irrelevant, you know. Like it's inconsequential the amount of people that are gonna vote for these people, and like, you know, if you're gonna vote for Hillary Clinton, that's what I think, you know. Even though the email thing is sketchy, even though she's kind of sketchy, but I think we should touch on an episode in the future about why we have this idea that Hillary Clinton is sketchy and really dive into it, because I don't really know.
Oh, yeah. That'd be a great topic of conversation. We can get Cameron Rash on here too.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
shout out to Cameron.
Shout out to Cameron, my boy Cameron Rash. You know, and I have buddies too who just hate her. You know, like think she's the worst.
I think she's
like
Satan.
Autistic subhuman. You know, autistic subhuman. You know, they hate her. You know,
I will say it is very hard, and I'm not subscribing to the idea that anybody who dislikes her is sexist or anybody who dislikes Obama is racist. But it really is hard for me to picture somebody hating these people as much as they do a woman and a black guy. They just hate them so hard.
Yeah, anything they say is wrong. You know, off the bat, and I can't just discount it as, oh, they really just don't like their policies. I have to think, you know, for at least for like a split second, like, where is that coming from? Like, why do you, like, I don't even hate Donald Trump. I don't hate any politician or any celebrity that much. You know, like, I don't hate anybody that much, and these people are like dead. I've talked to this guy who literally thinks that Hillary Clinton is devil incarnate. You know what I'm saying?
Like Antichrist?
Yeah, the Antichrist, exactly. And so I just think that's an interesting topic we should definitely cover on a future.
That is a really
show.
good topic to cover, is just elevating politicians to Hitler level.
Yeah,
like, I guess not elevating, de-elevating, descalating them. Like,
descalating, yeah.
Okay, and then finally, what are you looking forward? I guess we kind of touched on it already, but what are you looking forward to talking about in the future, or from this election, or just in the coming months? What are you looking forward to?
So pretty much like tell our viewership like what they can look forward to that we want to talk about. You know, like what is that essentially what you're asking? Like what?
Yeah, whatever. You can take it however you want.
Okay, yeah. Well, I want to talk about everything. You know, I want to talk about any social issue, but I'd like to talk about Black Lives Matter. That really interests me. Like the idea of Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. Like, do people that say All Lives Matter really mean well, or like what's you know what I'm saying? Like,
where's that coming from?
Yeah, what that dichotomy? Like that's an interesting dichotomy that I think is interesting to note. You know, I like that. I like Hillary Clinton. I want to do a piece specifically on Hillary Clinton. I want to do a piece specifically on Donald Trump.
Yep.
Obviously, I want to talk about Israel. That's awesome. I think that the Middle East and ISIS, and I want to talk about. Okay, here's another thing I want to talk about, and this might get me in a lot of trouble, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it.
Yep.
I want to talk about the
racist. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep going.
Exactly. I want to talk about the fact. Maybe it's not racist. Maybe bigoted would be a more appropriate term. Mm-hmm. But no, just kidding. But I want to talk about the fact how liberals love their boy, love Muslims, you know,
Yep.
but Muslims have like their whole religion, their whole
Oh yeah.
ideology is not liberal at all. Like
Yep.
absolutely not. Like if there was a Muslim guy running for president and he was like trying to enact Sharia law, there wouldn't be like religious freedom and like like leave him alone. You know
Yeah.
like. Yeah, like the hypocrisy of like Muslim bakeries. You know, like I want to talk about hypocrisy. I want to talk about why it's okay to shit on the white guy and it's not okay to why it's okay to shit on the white guy, the Asian guy, and the Mexican guy, but as soon as you start shitting on the Muslim guy and shitting on the black guy, it's like, or not even shitting, but just like even
The
bringing it
slightest
up.
critique. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So there's
just having
something
it on your tongue, you know, like just having it on your tongue. You're like, dude, people will like immediately assume the worst
Islamophobe.
of you. Yeah,
Yeah,
Islamophobe,
there's
racist.
something. Okay, there's a thing that's, and this is a whole can of worms. So we'll try to keep this short. But there's a thing called the racism of low expectations, and Majid Nawaz has been talking about this a lot. Sam Harris has talked about this a lot.
Sam Harris, I like him.
Faisid Al Mutar. I think I'm saying his name wrong, probably.
Fasid Al Jahid Matar, something like that.
Faisid Al Faisal, I can't remember his name. I will just post it later. A lot of people who are kind of ex Muslims and people who talk about Islam from sort of a critical perspective. A lot of them have been talking about something called the racism of low expectations. And basically what this means is that here in the West, in our country, we expect people to be tolerant of gay people. We expect people to be, what else could it be? Pro-abortion, this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
When it comes to somebody from
Not sexist. You
the
know, that's,
Muslim world, yeah, not misogynist. When it comes to the Muslim world, we lower our expectations, right, for Saudi Arabia and for these other countries that have horrible track records of
Right.
how they treat gay people, and
like
it's not
stoning people, you know,
it's not.
killing them. Like,
It's not even just. Yeah, you're right. It's not even just the governments and the laws. It's if you go to these countries and you take a survey of what people's opinions are. Even if you go to the UK, which is
Right.
you might think is a moderate Muslim country, right? You might think people there are more moderate because they're living in the West.
right.
Even there, 52% of Muslims said that they believed that homosexuality was immoral, and then something like a much higher percentage believed, I think it was actually 98% believed homosexuality was immoral, and then like 52% believed that it should be illegal or something like that. And I could be
right.
getting like the exact things wrong there. Maybe it's 52% said it was whatever. But the point is that massively high percentages of people in the Muslim world and even in the West that are Muslims have these awful perspectives on homosexuality and misogyny and this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, we have this racism of low expectations where we expect we kind of give a little leeway to people who are brought up in Yemen to as far as human rights are concerned, and maybe there's some good reasons for that. Like obviously we should expect people who grow up in a culture that doesn't believe in gay rights, obviously they would care less about gay rights, but does that mean that we lower our standard for them? I don't know.
Right. So yeah, that's an awesome topic and like something that we should definitely cover more of like in the future. You know, like we could talk about that for hours and hours on end, and I think that's what people should expect to hear from us. You know, like things like that. You know, we're not in the middle and so far that we're not so far in the middle, ingrained in the middle that we don't have opinions. We just have questions and we'd like answers, you know, and we want to talk about it. We want to have it on the national debate and the national stage, you know, like, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, like, what topics would you be interested in talking about, just so we can start?
Yeah, just like the topic of Islamophobia, the topic of trigger warnings, even meteor topics, cultural appropriation, things like, even, we can get into grittier things like economics and like, is it correct to have higher taxes for people? Should we raise taxes and try to do a socialist utopia, or should we go the other direction?
Anything like the market fixes everything, like that idea too.
Anything like that, yeah. And I guess we can both close out by saying just anything you want to close out with, Ro. Is there anything else on your mind?
You know what? I think that we've covered more than enough. And no, there's nothing more on my mind. I think that people do your own research, Like don't take what the first like get out of your echo chamber. You know, get out of this idea that the media that you follow is the correct media. Get out of this. Get the only way I can say it is get out of your echo chamber. Challenge yourself, and I like you said the other day, Tom. Meta analyze yourself and really think about where your thoughts are coming from and why you think certain ways, and like you know explore your own brain and explore data, explore facts, explore read. That's all I can say. What about
Yeah.
you?
No, I think that's a great way to put it. I think even if Ro or I come off as having an opinion, we are always open, and I actually love to be proved wrong. Like if you
Wrong,
can come and explain why this is wrong, that would be amazing. And so I don't know if we have it up right now, but we're going to have Twitter up, we're going to have a YouTube channel, and we're going to have hopefully a website up, hopefully be on iTunes and all of that stuff. Maybe not at the time of recording, but it's stuff that we're actively working on. So please contact us, leave us any questions, comments, suggestions, concerns. Let us know what you like, and we will do our very best to provide a stage and a platform for sensible debate to happen.
Hell yeah, man. And I guess to close out, what was our tagline, Tom?
If you get offended, it's your fault.
If you get offended, it's your fault. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.